time, I'm going to nail your sodding beak to the bar. The duck walks out. A couple of weeks go by with no sign of the duck. Finally, one day, the duck walks back in and goes up to the bartender and says, "Got any nails?" The bartender says, "No." The duck says, "Got any grapes?" Kit started laughing and I joined in, snorting together until we couldn't stop. "Well, that's one of your better ones, Kit," I said, looking up to see Grace in front of me, amused at the sight of the pair of us giggling together like a couple of 10-year-olds. "Come on, share the joke." Grace looked as gorgeous as ever, even at 6 a.m, her chestnut hair in one long, shiny plait over her shoulder, her brown eyes carefully outlined in smudged kohl to emphasise their envy-inducing size. "That's just what it was," I laughed, one of Kit's daft jokes. "Go and get your mum and me a coffee, Kit, would you?" Grace pulled out her purse. "And whatever you want, Libby." Grace turned to my daughter, who appeared to have abandoned her Grey's Anatomy or whatever it was she'd been engrossed in earlier in favour of Marie Claire. "Libs, anything for you?" Libby glanced our way, shook her head and turned back to her magazine. "Is she all right?" Grace frowned. "Not like Libby to pass up a latte." "I think she's just chilling. Must be hard after being used to the cloistered halls of Oxford to suddenly find yourself back en famille, as it were. I mean, we are a pretty noisy lot, aren't we?" I looked over to where my husband, Nick, had joined Seb and Jonty with our own 3-year-old twins in what appeared to be some strange game of hide your head up someone's jumper. "Camels," Grace laughed, handing Kit her credit card. "Camels? Did you never play it when you were a kid? You stick your head up the back of someone's jumper and pretend you're a camel in the desert." Grace smiled indulgently across at her one, and very much adored, son Jonty, before coming to sit in the chair vacated by Kit. "Bloody hell, these chairs are hard. Do they do it on purpose, do you reckon, so you don't fall asleep and miss the plane?" I laughed and raised my eyes towards Lillian, my Southern Irish nanny granny, whose head was nodding gently onto her hand-knitted scarlet cardigan. "Obviously not." "I'm amazed Lillian agreed to come with us," Grace smiled. "I mean, it's not much of a holiday for her looking after all these kids while we ski, is it?" "Oh, Lillian's determined to ski herself. She's always wanted to learn, apparently." "Really?" Grace looked doubtful. "She must be pushing 70. What if she breaks something?" "Bit ageist, that, Grace. Anyway, I reckon she'll have a couple of lessons and then give up. She's brought her knitting and word searches." Grace didn't appear to be listening. She was watching Jonty with Seb, a look of pure lust on her beautiful face. "Oi, I do hope that look is for Jonty and not his father," I said, poking her in the ribs. "Oh, absolutely," she said, but not very convincingly. She sighed and turned to me, slowly unravelling the expensive-looking cashmere scarf from around her neck. Another 6 and she'd be doing the dance of the 7 veils. "You know, Hat, I long for another baby." "You? Another baby? After what you went through last time?" I was genuinely shocked and looked at her in amazement. Was she having me on? I know. Grace was embarrassed. "After that bloody awful depression," she shuddered. "I'd never ever want to experience that again." The postnatal depression Grace had gone through after giving birth to Jonty, a month after I'd had Finn and Thea, was horrendous, and in the past 3 years she'd never once given the slightest indication that she might contemplate having another baby. Grace stopped talking and smiled at Kit as he handed out the goodies he'd amassed from the ridiculously expensive airport coffee shop before plugging himself into his iPhone and an eye-wateringly huge chocolate chip muffin. She wrapped her leather-gloved hands around her coffee and lowered herself further into her seat, her eyes never once leaving Jonty. "You know, I can't even bear to talk about that time," she finally said in a quiet voice. "It's like it all happened to someone else a long, long time ago." "Well, you certainly weren't yourself at the time," I smiled, patting her arm. "And I hate to remind you of this, Grace, but we are now well into our 40s. In fact," I added gloomily, "we're pushing 50. "Oh, for God's sake, Hat, we're both just 42.